The doll's house. When dear old Mrs. Hay went back to town after staying with the Vernals, she sent the children a doll's house. It was so big that Fat and the carrier had to carry it into the courtyard, and there it stood, propped up on two wooden boxes beside the feed room door. No harm could come to it. It was summer, and perhaps the smell of paint would have gone up by the time it had to be taken in. For really, the smell of paint coming from that doll's house. But the smell of paint was quite enough to make anyone seriously ill. In Aunt Beryl's opinion, there stood the doll's house, a dark, oily, spined green picked out with bright yellow. Its two solid little chimneys glued on the roof were painted red and white, and a door gleaming with yellow varnish was like a little slab of toffee. Four windows, real windows, were divided into panes by a broad streak of green. There was actually a tiny porch, top painted yellow, with big lamps of congealed paint hanging along the edge. But perfect little house. Who could possibly mind the smell? It was part of the joy, part of the newness. Open it quickly, someone. The hook at the side was stuck fast. Fat prized it open with his penknife, and the whole house front swung back, and there you were gazing at one and the same moment into the drawing room and dining room, the kitchen and two bedrooms. That is the way for a house to open. Why don't all houses open like that? How much more exciting than peering through the slit of a door into a mean little hall with a headstand and two umbrellas. That is not it? What you long to know about a house when you put your hand on the knocker? Oh ho! The Bernal children sounded as though they were a despair. It was too marvelous. It was too much for them. They had never seen anything like it in their lives. All the rooms were peppered. There were pictures on the walls, painted on the paper, with gold frames complete. Red carpet covered all the floors except the kitchen. Red plush chairs in the drawing room, green in the dining room, tables bed with real bedclothes, a cradle, a stuff, a dresser with tiny flats, and one big jug. But what Kezia liked more than anything, what she liked pridefully was at the lamp. It stood in the middle of the dining room table. An exquisite little lamp with a white globe. It was even filled all ready for lighting, though of course you couldn't light it. But there was something inside that looked like oil and moved when you shook it. The father and mother dolls, who sprawled very stiff as though they had fainted in the drawing room, and their two little children asleep upstairs, were really too big for the doll's house. But the lamp was perfect. It seemed to smile at Kezia to say, I live here. The lamp was real. The Bernal children couldn't hardly walk to school fast enough the next morning. They burned to tell everybody, to describe, to boast about their doll's house before the school bell rang. I'm to tell, said Isabel, because I am the eldest, And you two can join in after, but I am to tell first. There was nothing to answer. Isabel was bossy, but she was always right, and Lottie and Kezia knew too well the power that went with being eldest. They brushed through the thick buttercups at the road edge and said nothing. And I am to choose who's to come and see at first. Mother said I might, for it had been arranged that while the doll's house stood in the courtyard, they might ask the girl at school, two at a time, to come and look, not to say to tea, of course, or to come traipsing through the house, but just to stand quietly in the courtyard, while Isabel pointed out the beauties and Lottie and Kezia looked pleased. But hurry as they might, by the time they had reached the bird paring up the boys' playground, the bill had begun to jangle. They only just had time to whip up their heads and fall into line before the rule was called. Never mind, Isabel tried to make up for it by looking very important and mysterious and by whispering behind her hand to the girl near her. Got something to tell you at playtime. Playtime came and Isabel was surrounded. The girl of her class nearly fought to put their arms round her, to walk away with her, to beam flatteringly, to be her special friend. She held quite a court under the huge pine trees at the side of the playground, nudging, giggling together. The little girl pressed up close, and the only two who stayed outside the ring were the two who were always outside, the little Kilbys. They know better than to come anywhere near the Burnells. For the fact was, the school the Burnell children went to was not at all the kind of place their parents would have chosen if there had been any choice. But there was none. It was the only school for miles. And the consequence was all the children of neighborhood, the judge's little girl, the doctor's daughters, the storekeeper's children, the milkmen were forced to mix together, not to speak of there being an equal number of rude, rough little boys as well. But the line had to be drawn somewhere. It was drawn at the Kilbys. Many of the children, including the Burnells, were not allowed even to speak to them. They walked past the Kilbys with their heads in the air. As they set the fashion in all matters of behavior, the Kilbys were shunned by everybody. Even the teacher had a special voice for them and a special smile for the other children. When Lil Kilby came up to her desk with a bunch of dreadfully common-looking flowers, they were the daughter of Fry, hard-working little washerwoman, who went about from house to house by the day. This was awful enough, but fear was Mr. Kilby's. Nobody knew for certain, but everybody said he was in prison. So they were daughters of a washerman and a Goldberg. Very nice company for other people's children, and they looked at. Why Mrs. Kilby made them so conspicuous was hard to understand. The truth was they were dressed in beds given to her by the people for whom she worked. Lil was stout, plain child with big freckles, and her little sister or else was teeny, washbone up child a little white owl. Nobody had ever seen her smile. She scarcely ever spoke. She went through life holding onto Lil, with a piece of lace shirt screwed up in her hand. Where Lil went, or else followed, in the playground, on the road going to and from school, there was Lil marching in front of and or else holding on behind only when she wanted anything or when she was out of breath, or else gave Lil a tug, and Lil stopped and turned round. The Kelvies never failed to understand each other. Now they hovered at the edge. You couldn't stop them listening. When the little girls turned round and sneered, Lil, as usual, gave her silly, shamefaced smile, but our else only looked. And Isabel's voice, so very proud, went on telling. The carpet made a great sensation. But so did the beds with real bedclothes and stuffed with an oven door. When she finished, Kezia broke in. You have forgotten the lamp, Isabel. Oh, yes, said Isabel. And there's a teeny little lamp all made of yellow glass with a white globe that stands on dining room table. You couldn't tell it from a real one. The lamp's best of all, cried Kezia. She thought Isabel wasn't making half enough of the little lamp, but nobody paid any attention. Isabel was choosing the two who were to come back with them that afternoon and see it. She chose Amy Coley and Lena Logan, but when the others knew they were all to have a chance, they couldn't be nice enough to Isabel. One by one they put their arms around Isabel's waist and walked her up. They had something to whisper to her, a secret. Isabel's my friend. Only the little Kelvies moved away forgotten. There was nothing more for them to hear. Days passed, and as more children saw the doll's house, the poem up at speed, it became the one subject. The red. The one question was, have you seen Bernard's doll's house? Oh, and it's lovely. Haven't you seen it? Oh, I say. Even the dinner hour was given up to talking about it. The little girls sat under the fire eating their thick mutton sandwiches and big slabs of Johnny's cake spread with butter, while always as near as they could get sat the Kelvies, or as holding on to Lil, listening too, while they chewed their jam sandwich out of a newspaper. Mother, said Kezia, can't I ask the Kelvies just once? Certainly not, Kezia. But why not? Run away, Kezia. You know quite well why not. At least everybody had seen it except them. On that day, the subject rather flagged. It was the dinner hour. The children stood together under the pine trees, and suddenly, as they looked at the Kelvies eating out of their pepper, always by themselves, always listening, they wanted to be horrid to them. Amy Cole started the whisper. Lil Kelvy is going to be a servant when she grows up. Oh, how awful, said Isabel Burnell, and she made eyes at Amy. Amy swallowed in a very meaning way and nodded to Isabel, as she had seen her mother do on those occasions. It's true, she said. Then Lena Logan's little eye snapped. Shall I ask her? She wept. But you don't, said Jessie May, who I am not frightened, said Lena suddenly. She gave a little squeal and danced in front of other girls. Watch me now, said Lena, and sliding, gliding, dragging one foot. Giggling behind her hand, Lena went over to the Kilways. Lil looked up from her dinner. She wrapped the rest quickly away, or else stopped chewing. What was coming now? Is it true you are going to be a servant when you grow up? Lil Kilways, shrilled Lena. Dead silence, but instead of answering, Lil only gave her silly, champagne smile. She didn't seem to mind the question at all. What a sale for Lena! The girl began to titter. Lena couldn't stand that. She put her hand on her hips. She shot forward. Yeah, your father in prison, she hissed spitefully. This was such a marvelous thing to have said that the little girls rushed away in a body, deeply, deeply excited, wild with joy. Someone found a long rope, and they began skipping. And never did they skip so high, run in and out so fast, or do such daring things as on that morning. In the afternoon, we had called for the Vernal children with the buggy, and they drove home. There were visitors. Isabel and Lottie, who liked visitors, went upstairs to change their pinafores. But Kezia achieved out at the back. Nobody was about. She began to swing on the big white gates of the courtyard. Presently, looking along the road, she saw two little dots. They grew bigger. They were coming toward her. Now she could see that one was in front up and one close behind. Now she could see that they were the Kelvies. Kezia stopped swinging. She slipped up the gate as if she was going to run away. Then she hesitated. The Kelvies came nearer, and beside them walked their shadows, very long, stretching right across the road, with their heads in the buttercups. Kezia clambered back on the gate. She had made up her mind. She swung out. Hello, she said to the passing Kelvies. They were so astounded that they stopped. Lil gave her silly smile, or else start. You can come and see our doll's house if you want to, said Kezia, and she dragged one toe on the ground. But at that, Lil turned red and shook her head quickly. Why not? Asked Kezia. Lil gasped. Then she said, Your ma told Orma you wasn't to speak to us. Ah well, said Kezia. She didn't know what to reply. It doesn't matter. You can come and see our doll's house. All the same. Come on, nobody is looking. But Lil shook her head still harder. Don't you want to? Asked Kezia. Suddenly, there was a twitch, a tug at Lil's skirt. She turned round, or else was looking at her with big imploring eyes. She was frowning. She wanted to go. For a moment, Lil looked at or else very doubtfully. But then or else twitched her skirt again. She started forward. Kezia led the way. Like two little stray cats, they followed across the courtyard to where the doll's house stood. There it is, said Kezia. There was a pause. Lil breathed loudly, almost snorted, or else was still as stone. I will open it for you, said Kezia kindly. She undid the hook and they looked inside. There the drawing room and the dining room, and that's the Kezia. Oh, what a start they gave Kezia. It was Aunt Beryl's voice. They turned round. At the back door stood Aunt Beryl, starting as if she couldn't believe what she saw. How dare you? Asked the little Kelvies into the courtyard, said her cold, furious voice. You know as well as I do. You are not allowed to talk to them. Run away, children, run away at once. And don't come back again, said Aunt Beryl, and stepped into the yard and showed them out as if they were chickens. If you go immediately, she called, could, and proud. That did not need telling twice. Burning with shame, shrinking together, somehow they crossed the big courtyard and squeezed through the wide gate. Weak, disobedient little girl, said Aunt Beryl bitterly to Kezia. When the Kilbys were well out outside a Burnell's, they sat down to rest on a big red drain pipe by the side of the road. Lil's cheeks were still burning. Dreamily, they looked over the paddocks, past the creek, to the group of Watley's, where Logan's cows stood waiting to be milked. What were their thoughts? Presently, our Elsie knocked up close to her sister, but now she had forgotten the cross lady. She put out a finger and stroked her sister's head. She smiled her rare smile. I seen the little lamb, she said softly. Then both were silent once more.